Go ahead, Cheryl.
Good morning and welcome to our first Critical Conversations event. I'm really glad that today we'll be talking about mental wellness because this is one of the themes that Student Association has chosen to focus on for this year. It's important that we're having this conversation because I believe we've all heard the statistics on mental health concerns and college students, and they're on a rise right now. And so this is a chance for us to start this conversation on our campus and to normalize getting help. Before we get started, just one housekeeping announcement. This Critical Conversations will be a bit different in the sense that we have panelists. So if you have any questions while the program is going on, please submit those through Slido. I've just put up, I've just shared my screen so you can see the information there. So if you have any questions for the panelists or the counselor while the conversation is going on, just submit them through that. And yes, let's pray before we begin. Our kind of loving Father, thank you for today. Thank you that you've gathered us all here together, but not in the same room. Thank you that we're able to have this critical conversation on mental health. I pray that you may guide the conversation. I pray that we may all benefit from hearing from our different panelists. I pray that you may give them each peace of mind and calmness, help them to be able to share their stories and help us to be able to learn and for it to impact our lives. Continue to be with us and bless us. Thank you for all the people that have joined us. Go ahead, guide us in the day ahead of us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Okay, so just wanted to echo Cheryl's welcome to everyone. This is the first Critical Conversations event. We're so glad you're all here. Cheryl, if you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen, and then I'll be able to throw up what we're going to do next. So this is a little bit of a different format. I know we're all on Zoom, which we're getting so good at using this last year. But what we're doing today is we're featuring some students that are going to talk about why they're passionate about mental health, how they take care of their own mental health, and then we'll be taking in your questions, like Cheryl said. So go ahead and start sending those into Slido. We're going to be compiling them throughout the program. So we're going to start out with the panel discussion, and one of our panelists is actually a recent alumni, and he is a COVID nurse, and we're so proud of the work that he's doing for our vulnerable people right now. But he sent in his answers to our questions, and so there's two questions that the panelists are going to answer. The first one is, what makes you passionate about mental health? And I would love, as you're listening, if you're a student, I'd love for you to think about too, because we're talking all together. Even if we're not all at part of the speaking conversation, I'd love for you to think about what makes you passionate about mental health. And then the second question is, what strategies do you continue to use to deal with stress and anxiety, or how do you stay well? So kind of keep that in mind. I'm going to show Joey's video right now, and then after we do that, we will talk to our panelists that are in person. Okay, so stay tuned. It's just a quick video, and pardon the muffled. He's being super responsible and wearing a mask, and we're proud of that too. All right, so listen in.
But I just wanted to kind of give my name is Joseph Rocha. I apologize if y'all can't hear me that well, but I am on a plane right now. But I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on mental health. I am passionate about mental health because it is something that I personally dealt with on campus. I had depression. I attempted to take my life on campus. Thank God that did not work. But I only got it fixed and really worked on the issues my final year at Southern. And I'm passionate about it because I was able to hide it from my friends. And when I actually came out and spoke about it and preached about it, a lot of my friends were taken aback. They didn't know. And that was kind of my goal, right? Was to hide it, and because I felt like nobody understood what I was going through. And I think that mental health is important because of that, especially. So that's the thing, is that we we live our lives sometimes and we compare ourselves to other people. And I think that it is important that we do our best to realize that other people are also struggling with some of the same issues that we are. In the age of social media, it can be easy to see that maybe someone's life is really good. Someone can post a photo and be like, oh, see, they're having fun doing this, all that stuff. But you don't know the inner workings of their life, correct? And I think as a guy as well, mental health is something that it's just really something that we don't like to talk about as much. And so it's something that I'm passionate about simply because of those two things. And after I preached about it on campus, a lot of people came up to me and spoke to me about their struggles. And that's when I realized that this was a greater issue than I thought it really was. I will say that I still struggle with anxiety, and sometimes you can slip into a little bit of sadness sometimes. But the reality is that we have to do our best to fight these things, and we have to use our support systems. Honestly, the biggest thing that changed my life was going to therapy on campus. Tiffany is the greatest therapist I've ever met in my life. She really helped change my life for the better. And even now, I'm a coronavirus nurse. There's days that I have extreme anxiety. I'm currently flying somewhere else, and you still have to talk to someone. You still have to decompress. But I think the biggest thing that you have to remember is that you're not alone. That the issue that you might have, most likely, someone else is also dealing with. And so that's something that we have to realize, is that if you reach out to someone, most likely they understand your difficulty, and you don't feel isolated by yourself. And I will say that you also have to take care of everything, right? Your body, your mind is not just your mind. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to treat yourself well. And that's the only way that you'll really find success. And I won't lie to you and say that it's a magic pill with therapy or with anything, because the reality is every day is different and you have to fight through it. But knowing that you're fighting through it and understanding that there are also other people who are fighting with you is really the blessing that sometimes we don't see. So I hope that this week you can kind of focus on that and kind of realize that you are not alone and that you have all the help that you need. You just have to reach out and grab it.
Okay, that was Joey, and he very much wishes he was here with us. But I don't know about you guys, but in listening to that, I kind of feel like he was here with us. And so, so we're gonna go straight through to our interview with our live panelists. So Morgan Nash is here, and so I have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask you, Morgan, and that you can share. So the first question is, what makes you passionate about mental health?
First of all, I wanted to say thank you all for this opportunity. I'm excited to share a little bit more about my story today. But I think along the lines with Joey, one of the things that makes me the most passionate about mental health is the fact that I did struggle a lot with it, especially in high school. And there were certain individuals who came alongside me during that period of my life who were able to help me see Jesus when I couldn't, who were able to just journey alongside and believe in me. That meant so much. And so opening up the room for conversation is so important for me, because what they did for me, I would love to be able to help open it up as well for other people. So my struggle with mental health, just to give a brief overview, started in middle school. I was diagnosed with depression in 7th grade and actually put on antidepressants in 7th grade. It wasn't anything heavy and serious, but I really overworked myself at school. And when I came home at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was just be in my room, and I felt completely wiped of energy. And so that helped a little bit, but really it started progressing a little bit more when I got to high school. Just everything that was new, everything that was overwhelming. I felt like I was gasping for energy and for air, and I couldn't get it. And also during this period of life, while I was struggling with my mental health and my depression, I was trying to be there for other people who were struggling. And this took a huge toll on me because, I wasn't really keeping afloat, but I felt really responsible for looking out for other people who were in my same situation. And I remember as a 15-year-old in high school, staying up till 3, 4 in the morning some nights to text classmates who were telling me, I'm going to kill myself, and me staying up and I'm struggling and texting them, please stay alive, I won't tell anyone, but let me talk with you about this, and taking on a responsibility that I shouldn't have taken on. So this really took a toll on me my freshman year in high school. I ended up getting so overwhelmed that I went to Adventist Academy, but I got so overwhelmed that I asked my parents, like, can I take a semester off? I need a homeschool. I need some time. During this time, my mental health was so bad, I actually slipped into an eating disorder, which was rooted from middle school insecurities about my body. And this was always something that I struggled with, was self-image and how I looked. But in high school, if you know anything about eating disorders, you know that they're often not so much about body image, but they're a lot more rooted in one's desire to have some type of control over their life. And for me, while I was struggling, while I was in deep depression and could barely get out of bed some days, this was one thing that I grabbed onto, that I thought, maybe this will make me feel better. Maybe if I can control my weight, can control my looks. This became an obsessive habit that dominated my life. And it was my grasp to try to find happiness or control, to try to, if everything else is, blowing up, this is something that I can hold on to. I ended up taking the semester off, working on that a little bit. I felt like I caught my breath a little bit and I returned to school for my sophomore year, but my junior year, just different situations in my life happened that put me down the path of depression again, and my eating disorder flared up, and this time it was really bad. I had dark thoughts at night. I was very suicidal in my thoughts. The eating disorder controlled every part of my day. It was something that I was obsessive over and always on my mind. And I got to the point where I just hit absolute rock bottom and I couldn't do it anymore. And I was crying out to God, why is this happening? Please help me. I'm trying to get better. And essentially going to therapy, hitting rock bottom, releasing all my control, realizing there's nothing that I could do except for let God fully flood my heart. And there were things that I was doing to distract myself. I was looking to all the wrong things to heal me, and hitting rock bottom and going to counseling and being able to talk through it with a counselor, instead of trying to solve the situation on my own. I'm super glad and thankful to say now that I'm 2.5, 3 years clean from the eating disorder. I still do struggle with depression at times, but I'm so thankful for the supports in my life that I turn to, and I realize that I don't have to try to solve this on my own anymore. I know that sometimes school can be really overwhelming, maintaining a school and life balance, but being able to go to counseling, being able to be honest with my struggles with myself instead of just shoving them down, has helped me so much. And I'm excited to share some more tips that have helped me in that process as well.
I love that, Morgan. Thank you for sharing your story with us and for being so open. So yes, you said great into the next question, which is, how do you stay well? How do you cope when you start to feel down or when things are overwhelming? You're in your senior year. There's a lot of moving parts in your senior year. So how do you stay well?
So one of the biggest, and I'm sorry, I think they're blowing leaves outside of we were joking because we're like, someone's going to get a leaf blower outside their window today. So it's outside my apartment. I hope you can hear me. But like I mentioned, one of the biggest things that has helped me is giving myself permission to go through a healing process if I'm needing that in a certain season of life. I think after struggling pretty badly in high school with depression and just some overwhelming thoughts and feelings. When I came to college, I was like, okay, I want to move past those unhealthy coping mechanisms and behaviors. So I, for some reason, fooled myself into thinking that, maybe the best idea is just to suppress any emotion or any sadness or any anxiety, because I need to just man up and be mature. I'm in college now. I need to work through it. But I've realized that you're really working against yourself when you're telling yourself not to feel those things. And when you're just trying to shove your thoughts down. There's a study where a researcher told college students, for 30 seconds, I want you not to think about a white polar bear and just go about your life and don't think about a white polar bear. And they had to ring a bell every time they thought about it. And it's, of course, if you're telling yourself not to think about something, it's going to end up, coming up in your dreams and your thoughts. So one of the biggest things for me is just giving myself permission to acknowledge and work through something if it's very present in my life. It doesn't mean that it has to overwhelm me like it did in high school. I think that was my fears. Well, I'm not going to be able to go to class every day because look at how I got depressed in the past. But giving myself permission to feel it, to name my emotions. I think if we name our emotions, we have way more power over them than if we tell ourselves to suppress them. But also budgeting in time for my healing. If there's something that's going on, it's so necessary to be able to acknowledge it and feel it during my week, but also budgeting in time for happiness. So for me, if my semester is really stressful, one thing that's helped me is budgeting time for counseling every week, or budgeting 1 hour in the morning to have my devotionals, or to do honest prayer journaling, or honestly, sometimes if it's really a hard season of life, budgeting in an hour to cry in the evening, and I'm going to cry for this hour, and then I'm going to get up and make myself go to the gym. It's going to be hard, but I need to give myself permission to feel what I'm feeling, because if I don't, it's going to be so overwhelming, and it's going to seep out in everything that I'm going to try to do, and I'm going to have no energy. So that's a huge thing for me. Another thing that's helpful for me is to be aware of my triggers, and to be aware, of how I handle stress. So dealing with an eating disorder in high school, and even though I am clean now and am so thankful for the healthy patterns and habits that I've learned through counseling, I do have to be aware that sometimes when I'm stressed, that is something that I try to do. It's an unhealthy coping mechanism that I had in the past. So being aware of your triggers or situations that could flare up, those unhealthy thought patterns, and being aware of them so you can distance yourself from them before they happen is super helpful for me, as well as just having mentorship, having support. I don't have to tell everyone everything in my life while I'm going through it, because maybe that's not the healthiest, but having one friend that can know what's up with me, or having a counselor, or telling God, being able to put it open at least to someone, gives myself permission to just give myself grace. I don't have to function at 100% capacity in this season of life, and I've acknowledged why. I know why. I'm in tune with my feelings, but I'm able to have someone that can help me through that and help me process.
I love all of that. Yeah, I think one thing that I talk to students a lot about is, just because something's hard doesn't mean that anything's wrong. We should feel, when things are hard, it should feel a little bit different than when we're on vacation, right? Midterms and vacation, different vibe. But resourcing for yourself and taking care of it is so great. Again, the next person we're going to hear from is Thais. We're so excited to go ahead and ask you the same questions. So Thais, what makes you passionate about mental health?
The reason that I'm so passionate about mental health is because it's been by far the best thing that ever happened to me. My freshman and sophomore year, especially my freshman year, and Cheryl was my roommate, actually, I was really depressed to the point where I was investing like 6 to 8 hours crying every day, and I was hiding it from people, and except Cheryl, because she'd find me sometimes. But I would just go to class and I'd come back and I'd just cry, and I didn't really have any friends outside of Cheryl. And so, I was really depressed. And then starting my sophomore year, I ended a toxic relationship, and I already had baggage, but that kind of was just like the tipping ice of everything. And basically my sophomore year, I had friends reach out to me, and they were kind of just inviting me places, and I was like, oh, I can't say no. I'm not a no person. So I was like, I guess we'll go along. And so I was with my friends, but my depression was increasing and it was getting out of control. And people started noticing, and my friends, they kept tagging me along so that I wouldn't stay alone. But it was just this overbearing sadness that I had. Like, there was so much pain in my heart, and I was so mad at God during this phase because I felt like God didn't care. I didn't think that God was empathizing with my pain, and God wasn't just taking away my pain like this, like it wasn't just disappearing. And Joey, he was like one of those friends that, you know, he listened, he cared, and he was the only person that empathized with the type of pain I was feeling at a deeper level. Like, I had never had anyone understand what that depression felt like. And, you know, it's different when people give you advice, but when someone understands, it touches you at a deeper level. And so for me, I didn't listen to him because, you know, I was like, mental health, you know, people are going to think I'm crazy. But I reached the point where I was literally like about to kill myself. I was so tired of feeling so much pain. And basically, you know, I talked about it. And after that, he was like, you know, we're always going to be your friends, but there's only so much that we can do. And after that, I was like, yeah, I'll go to counseling, because he kept telling me, but I didn't want to do it. And then the next morning, he's like, so are you going to go to counseling, or do I have to go with you? And I was like, oh, shoot, I actually have to go. And so basically I started going to counseling, and I started opening up to friends about like how I was feeling. And I was more open to being vulnerable, because I have a hard time expressing my emotions. I always feel like I don't want to overburden people. But I've learned that a lot of my friends were going to counseling, and a lot of my friends were understanding of like depression and anxiety and the pressure of like college, and, you know, moving on to the next phase of like graduate school, and all these pressures that we get, you know, transitioning into like adulting. And I think that was one of the things that really makes me passionate about mental health, is that I had a community, and I had a friend like Joey that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and who pushed for me to advocate for my mental health when I wasn't doing anything about it. And honestly, I think the biggest part about counseling is that it helped me see Jesus for his true character, which I couldn't see in a toxic environment.
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, one thing I think we've tried to do as society and on campus is kind of decrease the stigma of, you know, it's, you know, you feel depressed or you feel anxious. And I think that's so important. I think there's more work to do on that for sure. But what I'm hearing is really like your friend group created this culture of wellness, and where they didn't see you as like how you were at your lowest point. The way they saw you was where you could be. You just needed a little bit of help, a little bit of support. And I think it's so important that we have people in our life that imagine a future for us of health, and imagine that we're going to have peace, and then kind of nudge us that way and say, hey, this worked for me, you know, maybe try it too. So tenacity and friendship is good. And I love Morgan and Thais, you know, where you guys are hitting where, you know, we don't want to take responsibility for other people's, you know, mental health. We want to be their friends, and then say, you know, yes, we are your friends, like Joey did for you, Thais, but then saying, I think you need a little more than friendship. I think you need somebody to help you feel better. And I believe you can. So I love it. Okay, so really quick, how do you stay well?
How do I stay well? Well, I definitely have to go every other week to counseling. And I know that for me, it's a struggle to open up, but when I feel overwhelmed, I really try to reach out to my friends. And maybe it's just like, it's just telling them like, hey, I'm not really feeling well today. And like, I've literally, even just this week, I had someone who just called me over, and they're like, how can I support you? And just having people like opening up to your friends, being vulnerable, also being aware, like self-aware of your feelings, and being connected with yourself is really important for me. I feel like oftentimes I don't want to cry, but sometimes I just need to cry, or I just need to vent. I just need to write it out. I definitely have to run 5 times a week that's definitely one of my coping mechanisms. I have to work out. I have to sleep 8 hours, or I'll be a moody Grinch or a sensitive Grinch, how I like to call it. And I have to eat, I have to drink water, and I love reading books. And I also try to engage in like self-love acts every day. And I do things that make me happy every day to create my own happiness.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a schedule of
Mhm.
not just like taking care of your body, but taking care of your mind too. I really love that. That's really good. Okay, Jonathan, your turn. Jonathan is one of our graduate students in the counseling program, and then also he works in first year experience. So a lot of you students probably recognize Jonathan if you're a freshman or have been a freshman recently. So Jonathan, what makes you passionate about mental health?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that drives me into the mental health field is the change that you see. Even before discussing about like the clients that I've met and the change that I've seen while working with them, the change that I've witnessed in my own life with mental health intervention. It was one of, as everyone's been saying, is one of the most life-changing things that you can experience. For those who know me, my personality is very like low key, like you would think that, very low stress. But in reality, there was a lot of stuff that I held to myself because I fed into the idea that as a counseling student, your life is put together already. I mean, you study about techniques, you study about different ways of coping, but it's not as easy as it sounds, or there's like this like a false idea. And I really fed into that. And it was interesting because it wasn't until I decided to enter into the counseling field where I realized like maybe this is something that I should probably invest in. And it was kind of funny because the time that I went into counseling was actually for career counseling. But there had been so many situations in my life that had happened, relationship issues, personal issues, spirituality conflicts and stuff like that. But because of my personality of just like keeping it all to myself, I didn't realize how much damage I was doing. And as I was talking with my career counselor, the topic came up about, is there anything in your life that you feel like could influence the way that you perceive like your career and job? And for some reason, I just felt like I needed to decompress every single thing that I had been holding in for such a long time. And I feel sorry for him because he probably didn't expect me to start talking about my own personal experiences. But after that moment, I realized that this was something that I needed. My personality was to hold everything in, don't intervene, don't bring other people into the mix. It's just you and you deal with it alone. And that is how like I portrayed it. And ever since that moment, I realized that the people that are there for you are intentional and wanting to like help you out. And if you allow yourself to become vulnerable in that situation, then you come out with a different look on it, even if it's just for that day. I found that it was such a powerful thing to just discuss about something that could be as simple as a relationship concern, or I wasn't able to have my devotional today, I just feel really down about it, or I just didn't do well on this examination. So it was something that like I was completely awestruck about how simple just a conversation about mental health is for somebody who really didn't think that that was something you really discuss. As I mentioned, you would think that as a counseling student, as somebody who understands about psychology, the brain, that your life is put together, it's set, so you don't have to worry about it. And so transitioning to where I am now and the clients that I'm meeting with, I meet with students as well who are asking, like, even if this is not for something that's big, is counseling worth it? And I, of course, 100% say yes, because I experienced the small things in my life that when I talked about it, it helped me out so much. So I definitely saw a change in myself, which allowed me to advocate for those who are also in the same boat as I am, who are scared or just don't feel like their voice needs to be heard because they feel like they may have it all together. So I am very passionate about the field that I'm in, the demographics that I've encountered. Each person has their own progress and their way of coping with life. And so I'm very passionate about just being that small factor in their life that can promote change and to work collaboratively with them to get to the point where they feel like they're capable of doing things on their own, or willing to seek out help the same way that I did whenever I decided to go into counseling.
I love that, Jonathan. And as a counselor, I'm so excited that you're coming into the field and the passion that you have for that. So what's a strategy that you use to stay well? And then for all of the rest of you, get those questions into Slido, because that's the very next thing we're going to roll into. And we want to hear what kind of questions you have. So if we can't answer all of them today, we're going to save them and we'll find other ways to answer them later. But go ahead and make sure you're getting all those questions in. All right, Jonathan, what's a strategy that you use to stay well and healthy?
Yeah, so kind of going back is being intentional with how you go about dealing with your stress, whether it's a depressive state, whatever it may be. As I mentioned, my personality is to be very to myself, but I kind of, like similar to what Morgan said, give yourself permission to go about doing something that may feel uncomfortable at the moment. So one thing I do is I actually reach out to people instead of holding it to myself, because that is like the hardest thing for me. So I have to tell myself that you understand that the way that you felt about whenever you did go and talk about it, that same result could be as good as it is at this moment. So being intentional, definitely like doing things throughout the day, not just simply just sticking with your work or with class or whatever it may be. So waking up in the morning and doing a meditation, deep breathing exercises. I have like an app that like this guy or there's somebody like will guide you through a meditation, and that has been like the best way to start my day. And then having my devotional just to get integrated and just get prepped, and then after. Throughout the evening, going and working out. I think that's such a great way to decompress after a long day of just doing endless work or internship, whatever it may be. I found that I really enjoy working out, but I also like the feeling that I get afterwards, because I feel like I had so much that I had built up, and now I get to just let that all go. So definitely starting the day right and then ending the day right.
I love the way you're bookending your day, where you're starting it off thinking about things that make you feel well, and then you're ending it with releasing the things from your day that that you don't need to take with you into the evening. That's so good. I love that. Okay, so now we're going to transition over, and Dr. Negron has been looking through your questions, and he's going to be asking the peer questions to our student panel. So excited to hear their answers, and then any clinical questions. I'll do my best to answer. So I'm going to mute myself and toss it over to you.
Tiffany, don't mute yourself yet, because the first question is a general question. I thought I'd ask this one first. So there is a question that I think is appropriate to ask as the first one. How many people at Southern are affected by mental health issues?
That is such a great question. I believe that the research, and this is pre-COVID research, and Dr. Wampler is on this call, so you can chime in if I'm incorrect. I believe the national stats show that it's 1 out of every 4 college students. And so, you know, with confidentiality and you know, with a lot of the students you're hearing saying, like, I struggled for so long before I even told anybody, you know, to give an accurate number, what Southern looks like would be kind of really complicated, but it's 1 out of 4 students. And so if you think about our population here, that's pretty significant. And again, these are statistics that are pre-COVID. And so, you know, we're not feeling necessarily better than we did a year ago on college campuses. So it's pretty serious.
We've had several individuals ask virtually the same type of question. If I have a friend that I'm concerned about, or if I have a friend that I'm seeing symptoms of mental health issues, how can I help?
Yeah. So
and a related question is, if I have a friend who's considering, who has been talking suicidal, talking out suicidal thoughts, that's been asked more than once too. How can I help?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So maybe I'll answer it from like the clinical and staff side, and then if one of our student panelists wants to contribute a short answer as well. So if you are concerned about a student on campus, if they're in the dorms, if you're in the dorm, go to your dean, go to your RA right away. Our office is always open for concerns. If you're worried about somebody and you're like, they just seem kind of depressed or not like themselves, come and tell one of the counselors. You can call us, you can email us, you can just come straight up and walk up here, and we can be discreet and check on that student for you. That's what we're here for. Our whole job is just to take care of our students and make sure that they're as healthy and happy as they can be. If someone is actively suicidal, if you are on campus, call campus safety. If you are in a dorm, immediately, be with that person, get a hold of your dean or RA and stay with them until a staff member is with them as well. And they'll take it from there. If you are off campus, call 911. And you don't have to decide if they're actually suicidal or not, if they're actually going to do it. If someone says that they have a plan and they're going to hurt themselves, we take it seriously, and there's other people who will assess them and take care of all that. But really, as a friend, as a student, even as an employee here on campus, just being that bridge to be with that person and contact somebody who will take it from there. There is protocol that we follow here on campus. And so, but yes, if you're just concerned about a student or worried about them, please contact us, or contact a dean, and they'll get a hold of us. If someone's unsafe, then call campus safety, get a dean, get someone right there right away. And if it's during business hours, you're always welcome to call our number, which is 236-2782. And so I don't know if one of the student panelists wants to chime in on how to help a struggling. Okay, go ahead, Morgan.
So real quick, I think Tiffany did a great job of covering. It's so good to be straight up with them about, I want to help you. Let's help you get help, and make sure that you're watching your mental health as well. Because like I was explaining with my story, sometimes we want to make sure our friends feel safe, and we can take a lot into quiet, corners of wanting to, keep all this stuff private for their safety. But I will tell you, and I think Thais can speak to this, hearing what she said, the biggest thing that helped me when I was severely depressed in high school and not wanting to get out of my bed every day was sometimes it was very helpful for a friend to come and sit by me and talk with me. But the most helpful things were them just saying, come on, we're going to go on a walk. Like, we're going to go do this. Like, it's okay. So don't be afraid to just be a bubbly encouragement to them, sit with them and talk with them, but also take them to the resources that we have on campus. We have chaplains, we have counselors, and don't underestimate the power of just your consistency, but know that it's not your place to offer your clinical advice and talk someone through suicidal thoughts. The best thing that you can do for a friend is just be very honest about, I care about you, but we're going to get you some better help here. And I promise you, even if they're mad at you in the moment, they will thank you later. I think sometimes we can feel timid of like, oh my goodness, like, it's not my place. It's not my place. If someone's struggling and you are someone that they've told, it is your place to step in and take them to the next step, and to pass them on to the correct resources. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's really good, Morgan. So we never keep secrets when it has to do with health and safety. And that's just kind of a good rule of thumb, whether you're an employee or a student.
Okay, this is a good question for our panelists. How do you deal with busy days when you feel like you don't have time for self-love, decompressing, and some of the other preventative measures that you are doing to stay healthy?
I actually had this happen to me yesterday. Yesterday, I had to unfortunately miss class on Monday, and I had tons of work. And I think it's just the idea that, life is not going to get perfect after you go to counseling, and you have to understand that there is going to be hard days. And I mean, for me being a bio major, it's like I got to get things done. Today is going to be rough, but that it's just one rough day. It's not a bad life. And so honestly, it's the little things. Like sometimes I have a playlist where I just listen to songs that make me feel good, or I'll literally just call a friend for like 5 minutes on my walk from Hickman to the village. And that's sometimes all I need. Or I'll watch a funny TikTok video. I'll take break. You definitely have to take breaks. Do be taking breaks while you're studying. Don't overload either. But just finding little things to do. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You know, it's not like a two hour, I'm going to go run till I get exhausted, you know. But definitely just doing little things. It's the little things. It doesn't have to be, you know, a whole spa day, but definitely just looking out and, you know, timing yourself, making intervals. Like I'm going to study from 5 to 7, and then I'm going to eat dinner, and then I'm going to continue pushing through. But definitely just making little efforts in the big things.
Anyone else? Or we can go on to another question and someone else answer that question. Jonathan, were you going to go ahead?
Yeah, I love that response. Definitely like focus on the little things, but I also think it's consider your small victories, because for some people they always think like, oh, it's something that I can't do or I couldn't have time to, but then reflect on what I got accomplished already. And so kind of redirecting your thinking to things that I've done that you feel proud of. Yes, you might be like completely busy, but think about what you've already accomplished. That is something that when you think about the small victories, it's just one little thing that can push you to further continue in what you're doing and not overwhelm you to the point where I can't do this, but I've done stuff like this or I've done it before. So I know that I can continue.
Next question. What would you recommend to the introverts on campus so that they're not feeling lonely?
Well, maybe I'll start, and then I'd love to hear what the panelists have to say. So, you know, I'm kind of introverted, which you wouldn't think because I spend so much time with people. My sister calls me a social introvert. And so, which means I have a lot of friends and I really love to spend time with them, but I gain my energy from being alone. And so I think, you know, the first thing is to figure out how much alone time do you need to be a balanced, grounded person. And then, you know, what kind of social interaction works well for you? Do you like a big group or do you like a small group? So do you want to have, you know, connection like lunch with people or study time with people or one-on-one time or big groups but only once a week? So kind of figure out what your recipe is for that, I think can be helpful. And then you can kind of know what to try. And if you're not sure, try out some different things. Try out a life group, try out some of the organizations, try out studying in big groups or small groups or having lunch with several people or one, and kind of check yourself, be super self-aware and see what feels good to you. But I'd love to hear one of the other three chime in on that too.
I can speak on it. I probably the same as Tiffany. I actually am really introverted. People usually laugh and say, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I am. My plans for this weekend are to hide away and get some alone time to fuel up for next week. So I can totally understand. Sometimes I put a lot of pressure on myself. I need to socialize, or maybe I need to just go to the other extreme and get with a huge group. But I realize like, that doesn't really fuel my energy. And so I think Tiffany, it makes a good point, just finding what fuels you and finding like-minded people. If you're an introvert, if you want to just go have coffee with someone, have a deep conversation, have a not so deep conversation, go just spend time with one or two people. Take the pressure off yourself. If especially coming into Southern as a freshman, seeing everyone join these huge groups where all these academies merge and it's 15 people all the time. You don't have to do that here at Southern if you don't want, but you definitely definitely can at times, but invite a friend to study with you, invite a friend to go walk on the track and just talk, or study, work out, little things like that. Those would be my tips. And I would say that life groups were a huge thing for me for 3 years at Southern. And this year they have a lot of life groups going on, but just having one group every week that meets and you're talking about meaningful things and its goals, or a group of people that you can rely on, that was a huge way for me to feel connected while also I'm getting some social time in and not feeling too overwhelmed. So.
Okay, Thais, maybe you can start this one. What can I expect to happen if I get the nerve to go to a counseling session?
Well, I mean, I think it's just conversation. I honestly, every time I go into counseling, I have a list of certain things that I don't want to burden my friends with, that I feel like a therapist should address. And I just go and we have a conversation, and sometimes I just need to rant the entire hour. Sometimes I just need to go cry the entire hour. And there's tons of tissue boxes in Tiffany's office, I promise. But just expect conversation, expect advice. But do know that what Tiffany says can only go so far, or a counselor's advice could only go so far if you don't take it into practice. So, Tiffany can tell me what to do or counsel me to see, one of the big questions I had was, how do you create happiness? And I was like, I don't know. And then she just took the first step to like, what makes you happy? And I had to go out and do my homework and figure it out. So definitely it's going to be an open conversation, but also it's going to be a way to make you think about things that you need to address and actually go do.
Thais, you have just created a good segue to this next question, okay? So what does mental health and mental wellness actually mean? Is it happiness, or is it the absence of mental illness? Maybe Tiffany or Dr. Wampler should answer that question.
Well, I think, when it comes to, mental wellness, that's kind of a term we're throwing around a lot this week because this is Mental Wellness Week. And, when Dr. Negron had come to us last fall wanting to talk about doing a mental health event on campus the second week of school, which was pre-COVID, this was already in the works for you guys. My first question was, are we focusing on mental health, pathology-based or wellness-based? And he was like, wellness. So when you think about being well mentally, I think it's about balance and being the healthiest version of yourself. And that looks different in different seasons of life, right? And it also looks different for different people. There are a lot of students who will feel depressed at some point, but they're not suffering from a disordered depression, if that makes sense. Like if you have a breakup and it was a long relationship and you're really heartbroken, you should feel sad about that. That's normal. But then, if you can't quite get out of that and that stretches on a long time, you might need some help with that. For some people, due to genetics and other things, they have a hereditary disposition to depression that's not related to a life situation. And so to say that like being mentally well is the absence of any mental illness, it really precludes people who might suffer from a mood disorder like bipolar or other special challenges. And so when we think about being mentally well, where my brain goes is you being the healthiest, most balanced version of yourself. I know a lot of times it's really tempting to judge yourself and see your true self as your low points, but really everyone's true self is what you look like when you have enough sleep, enough food, your life is balanced, not a lot of stress, when you're shining. That's who you are as a person. That's your true self. And I think, thinking about being mentally healthy, mentally well is bringing you to that point, as close as you can get to that point at whatever stage you're at. So during midterms week, mental wellness for everybody looks a little bit different than maybe on Christmas vacation, right? I know mine does, because I absorb some of the stress that's on campus. So I think when we're thinking about that, it's the best version of you, what that looks like for you, and it's really individual, and that's what we do, is kind of help you get there. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, it's hard to believe, but we've come to the end of our first critical conversation. We have committed to finishing at 10 to noon time, and we have basically, according to my clock, 1 minute and probably not enough time to answer another question. I want to let those of you who are in the audience, I want to let you know that this is the first of several conversations we are going to have this semester. Next week we take a break, and then on the 17th, Dr. Lisa Diller from the History Department will be leading out a critical conversation on the women's role in voting and politics. This year, you may know, is the 100-year anniversary that women got the right to vote. And so we are going to have a critical conversation on that, and she's actually going to have some students also involved in that. On the 24th, we are going to deal with the question is social justice anti-Adventist. And then on October 1, we're going to have a conversation about sexual misconduct on Southern's campus. So, and then let me just say that on October 8th, Stephanie Guster will be leading a discussion on Adventism and racism. So we've got some great discussions coming up. At this time, I believe we're ready for prayer. Tiffany, do you have any final comments before we pray?
Just wanted to thank everybody for coming. You came and gave 50 minutes of your day that you didn't have to. And we're so grateful that you were here. We're so appreciative of the questions and your participation. A big thank you to our panelists and to our absent panelist, Joey. Whenever we share our story, it's a gift. And so I know that I feel that gift with you guys sharing your experiences, and I can see other people's faces and see that they did too. And so this was recorded. If you have a friend that you think could benefit from seeing it, or you just kind of want to review some of the things that were said, we will be making that available for you. And just want to say too that if you feel like you're in need of counseling, or we could be a support to you, the way you set an appointment is by calling 236-2782, area code 423, or you can just come up and make an appointment up here. It is confidential, it is free, it's included in your tuition, and it's open to everybody. So just want to encourage you to reach out for that support. And then Morgan, if you'll have prayer for us.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, I thank you for the 50 minutes we've had together today to have an honest conversation about mental health. Lord, we thank you so much, because even when our feelings are weary, or when we can't see you, you're ever present for us, Lord, and you are a great counselor. We thank you for the people that you put in our life to teach us about you and to be consistent and journey alongside us. And I ask that this year you would help us open our hearts to the love that you want to pour into us, and open our minds, point out if you would like us to reach out to anyone, or ways that we can take care of ourselves better, Lord, so we can pour out for you. We love you so much. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
have
everybody.
a great lunch. Bye.
And there was one, thank you to our student panelists. You were brave, you were vulnerable, and thank you for being so vulnerable today.